Welcome back. It's still the morning brief right here on Channels Television. Time now to reflect on some, constitutional matters and examine, of course, the role of the judiciary, but not forgetting a conversation less had, particularly one about the subnational legislature. And joining us for some insight is Mr. Ikemini Udim, a legal practitioner who joins us virtually on the program. Welcome, Mr. Udim, to the program.
Thank you so much for having me.
Now, I'd like to begin this way. The ongoing constitutional review, of course, which peaked with zonal congresses, hearings, if you like, in different regions of the country last year, was a big item on the front burner. But some have said, look, the constitutional review is a waste of time and resources, that if indeed there is a serious political will, as far as given to the constitutional process, then it can be done in a matter of weeks and not necessarily the length of time that has been committed to this. And so this is why, I want you to talk to us about the role of the subnational legislature in this regard, which should be giving concurrence to some of the items that would be arrived at after the hearings at the national level. What are your expectations where the state assemblies are concerned? What interests do you think they'll be advancing?
Well, they should advance the interest of the people of this country, the interest of the people of the various states where the houses of assembly is operating. And it shouldn't be selfish interest. It shouldn't be serving the interest of the governor. It should rather be serving the interests of the people. Recall that the 1999 Constitution does not allow the National Assembly to amend any section of the Constitution by itself. The Constitution requires that the subnational legislature should also be a part in the amendment of the Constitution of the country. And to that extent, it will be a failure on the part of the legislature at the subnational not to work for the greater interests of the people of Nigeria. And so to that extent, I expect them to only concur to the things that will serve the larger interests of this country. Recall that not long ago, I think in the last administration, some houses of assembly voted against their own autonomy. And that for us was very surprising, how you would say you do not want autonomy. It reminds us of the era of slave trade, where some slaves were freed and asked to go home. And then they said, no, I love my chains. I'm not going to go home, so let me stay here. So that for us was very disappointing. And we understand that that was done because some governors did not approve that the legislature in their states should concur to the autonomy of the legislature. I think that this time around, things should change for the better, and therefore the actions of the state houses of assembly regarding amendments of the Constitution has to be holistic, has to be done in the best interest of the country and not for selfish political interests.
Now, do you have any worries in that regard? And, we could list a number of items up for constitutional review. There are so many items on the Electoral Act Amendment Bill, some of which border on serious political interest among the political class. There's state police, there's state creation, just to mention a few. The expectation is that the state assemblies will further the interests of the people. But do you have any worries, particularly when we, look critically at the interests, that surround or shape these items that we have listed?
Very unfortunately, most houses of assembly in this country, they pay more attention to what the governor tells them. A lot of the houses of assembly in this country have not represented what the Constitution truly wanted them to represent. They listen first to the governor. They ask the governor, should we concur? Should we not concur? And that for me is disappointing. I expect the state houses of assembly to be independent because the Constitution has also created them to function independently without necessarily, waiting to hear what the governor says they should do and doing exactly that. I expect them to work together for the amendment of the Electoral Act to the extent that we have electronic voting introduced into the Electoral Act. It is always shameful to read some sections of the Electoral Act that seem to put us way back into the 18th century. You have a section of the Electoral Act that says that electronic voting or anything electronic shall not be accepted in the 21st century where everything is done electronically. So I expect the houses of assembly of the various states of the federation to work together to ensure that we have something like that kind of amendment in the Electoral Act to ensure that we have election that is more reliable, election that is not always contested, election that will not always take people to the court and allow the courts to be the decider of who wins, who represents us at all levels in this country. So, like I said earlier, I would want the houses of assembly to work in the best interest of this country and not only for selfish political reasons. My fear is that every house of assembly in this country, about 28 at the moment, all of them are members of the ruling party, and it might be difficult for some of them to really stamp their authority to pose some suggestions that are not to the best interest of the country. But I still implore them to work in the best interest of the country in spite of the party affiliation of the various houses of assemblies.
So, Mr. Odin, there is what the law says about separation of powers, independence, and all of that, which, of course, influences the expectations of people, right? The people expect that, okay, this is how things should work when it comes to the executive, legislature, and the judiciary at the state level now. But then there is a reality. There is the politics of it. And, well, I should say, sadly, that is what takes the day most times, not really what the law says about independence. So fundamentally, it's maybe not about the laws or, the absence of it. It's really about the structure, the politics, the way things are done. I mean, you find out how these people get into the state assemblies, for example, and you begin to see that it's really hard to talk about independence or separation of power when hitherto they actually got there based on the recommendation or sponsorship of the person in power. Take the LG autonomy that the Supreme Court ruled on. It looks like even the president is sort of begging the governors to basically implement it or do things the way that the law says. So what must fundamentally change in the politics, in the way things are done, to ensure that we have this proper separation of power as the law says, and we have a more effective governance at the state level?
So we must give power back to the people. Let the people be the ones to elect our leaders. Because like you rightly said, in Rivers State, for instance, you've heard the FCT minister a number of times say that he is the person that bought the forms for all the members of the Rivers State House of Assembly. And that for me was very surprising. And I hope nobody allows that to happen in any state of the Federation again moving into the 2027 election. And you can see the loyalty that those gentlemen have for him over and above, even the interest of their own state, in my own opinion. So let us give power back to the people. Let anyone that wants to contest the election be the one to buy his own form, and let him be able to campaign and then satisfy the people with the manifesto that he has, what he intends to do, and then the people vote for him, and then he is declared the winner of the election in a free and fair process. He goes to the legislature. He will have an independent voice. He will be able to say no to policies of government that are not in the best interest of the people of the state. I still remember what happened in this country between 1999 and 2007. The legislature was robust. We remember the likes of Galio Manahaba in the Federal House of Representatives, with Baba Obasanjo as the president of the country. We remember Chuba Okadibo. We remember lots and lots of persons in the legislature that could stand their grounds and then be able to say no to policies that we, deemed to be anti-people. We have lost such crop of legislators in this country. And for me, that is very unfortunate. It goes back to the recruitment process because the power of recruitment has been taken largely away from the people and controlled by the governors, controlled by other, very strong factors in the country. And this is not good for us. for us to have a country where these arms of government are truly independent, the legislature, the executive, and the judiciary are truly independent, we must begin from the electoral process. We must elect persons that, truly represent the interest of the people and not allow governors, to, before the election, they are the ones that take over the electoral process, they select who represents which constituency and all of that. For as long as we continue to do that, then this country will continue to suffer regarding the quality of legislators that we are sending out there at the state houses of assembly, at the National Assembly, and it is not in the best interest of this country.
Is it really possible to change the status quo? Because I've been trying to process a lot of things at the same time in terms of solution. Is it really possible to change the status quo? Let me tell you what has been institutionalized in form of a hegemony now. Godfatherism. If the gentlemen in the River State House of Assembly, for an example, were doing the things they are doing purely because they are lawmakers, I would have loved that kind of scenario. But it is purely a proxy war. No matter how they try to deny it, everybody knows that is a Nyesom-Wike Fubara battle. We come to Lagos State, where I always like to use these two scenarios. Mudashiru Obasa was impeached by his own colleagues, and the powers that be put him back as the Speaker of the State House of Assembly, and he's still the Speaker, and powers will run again and all of that. So this tells you that power has left the hands of the people, which is the core of this conversation. Power has left the hands of the people, is now in the hands of politicians, and by extension, the hands of the political godfathers or all of these governors. And what's the implication? Oversight will suffer. Democracy will be at risk. So what exactly, is there a way to get out of this? I'm just painting a very dark picture to see whether I can put some light to it.
Yes, there is a way to get out of this, and my suggestion is having fair and fair election. So it goes back to INEC. The chairman of INEC, he's just been confirmed as the man at the helm of the affairs of INEC. What's going to happen in the off-season elections that we're expecting in some states of the Federation? I had expected him by now to begin to let Nigerians know what's going to happen differently in those states. I had expected him to start saying, we're going to implement electronic voting. In our days in the university, SCG election was like local government election. DSS, policemen, everybody needed to be deployed to campus so as not to cause anything untoward happening on campus. But today, most campuses in this country, they have introduced electronic voting. So you don't need to be on campus on the day of election. All you need to do is to stay in your hotel or stay at home, and then you use the login details, and then, you vote. I have expected the INEC chairman to let us know what the decision of INEC is in this direction regarding electronic voting. The Nigerian Bar Association does electronic voting, and everybody participates, seamlessly. And a lot of other associations do that. Now, if we have free and fair election in this country, then we would have demystified godfatherism. Because when we have a system that I vote and my vote counts, it therefore means that one person cannot just stand and then decide who becomes the member of the legislature representing 10 electoral wards, constituencies and all of that. So that's one. Number two, we need to check the menace of defection in this country. Now, I was doing research the other day, and I got to realize that in Ghana, before you defect from the legislature, you should first of all tender your letter of resignation. You first of all do that. And you can see how the polity in Ghana has been what we can call very stable. In the last 3 general elections, you would see no political party has 90% of votes. This one has 46. This other one has 54. And that steadies the democracy in Ghana. That's still moving forward. And you can see, you can even project that, the politics in Ghana is going to grow stronger. So we must check the issue of defection. Why are politicians defecting? Because they believe that when you defect, you have automatic tickets in the party, you are going to the ruling party, and possibly you're going to win the election. So we need to check that issue, included in our law. It's already there in the Constitution, but we need to activate it because it's lying dormant. We need to do something to activate that provision of the Constitution that spells out consequences for defection, so that when you win election on the platform of Labour Party, you go and stay in the legislature for the 4 years that you were elected, and you do everything you can to improve on what is going on in your party without necessarily moving from one party to the other. And that affects our polity. It affects what goes on in the political space in this country. So principally, INEC must give us fair and fair election. If we have that, then a lot would have changed in this country.
And you know, Mr. Edim, when we sort out that, you know, ensuring some order in the political space in the area of defections, there's also the concern about political litigation. But that's another conversation for another day. Thank you so much for coming on the program. It was Anchor at this point. Mr. Ekimene Udim is a legal practitioner. Thank you for your insight.
A pleasure.
We'll take a moment now and return for some more. Stay with us on The Morning Brief.